Today's top stories, breaking news, and traffic and weather first on the 5s. It's Washington's Drive at 5 on WMAL.
We're going to continue on this VA story, and I do want to take your calls. In fact, we will, in the next half hour, pretty much just take your calls and play audio on these unbelievable hearings that occurred late last night and the story that continues to develop over whether General Eric Shinseki can keep his job as Secretary of the VA. And the bigger question is that enough? I mean, what does that really do? I mean, other than giving the president's opponents a scalp, a political scalp, which is a big deal in this town, and I get it, and that's how you play the game. But at that point, what do you do for the vets? What happens, and what is the conversation in this town other than, oh gosh, how is this going to hurt the president? Well, yeah, it's going to hurt the president, fine, but there's a lot of vets that are hurting right now, and they need care. We are going to take your calls on it, and I want to know what you think is the best solution. But we're pivoting now in this segment to talk about the unbelievable story that was revealed by the Washington Times this morning, and that is the story of children coming across the southern border of the United States of America, minors, many of them under the age of 12, coming across the border by themselves, crossing the border, all of them in the hopes of staying here because they know that this is their opportunity to exploit the Obama administration's immigration deportation policy. Understand the context here. In the middle of the presidential election of 2012, that summer, the president needed to bolster his standing with Latino voters. He needed to bolster his standing with his base, progressive voters, with very liberal voters who don't really take the border issue as seriously as others in this country. He needed to be able to have a wedge issue so he could paint Republicans as anti-Latino, anti-family, and uncompassionate toward those who were here living in the shadows, as they constantly say, illegally. And so what he said was children, because it's always about the children, under the guise of protecting the children of illegal immigrants. The president directed, unilaterally, without congressional oversight, directed the Department of Homeland Security to look the other way and not deport children who were brought to this country illegally. And a lot of people understand and say, well, listen, it's not the kids didn't have a choice. Why should we, why should we deport them? It wasn't their choice. Well, now here's what's happening. According to Homeland Security officials, 60,000 minors are going to cross the border this year on their own, and it could double next year. By themselves, and they are now refugees in our nation because they're exploiting this policy. Joining us right now is a congressman who took this up today. His name is Blake Farenthold, Republican of Texas, and he questioned Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson about this. Thanks for joining us today, sir.
Oh, happy to be with you.
Did you get any response from the Director of Homeland, Secretary of Homeland Security on this? I mean, this is an unsustainable policy. This is a disaster.
We've created an incentive for folks to do something very dangerous, and that's to phone home, have whoever they left their children with, hire a coyote to carry their children across the border and hope the children get picked up by a customs or ICE officer before they're picked up by a human trafficker.
And they're all being sent to, what, foster care as they're being processed and they request amnesty? What's going on?
Well, what happens is they're first held by ICE, and then they're sent to these homes, one of which is 3 blocks from my house where I live in Corpus Christi, Texas. There's another one in Driscoll, Texas, and there's a waiting list of kids to get into those. They are then processed. They determine who their parents or next of kin or responsible party for them is in the United States. Whether that responsible party or parent is a legal resident of the United States or not, we fly the kids at taxpayer expense to wherever the adult that wants to claim them is. They're typically on the plane, 2 or 3 of them on the plane with me every week when I fly to Washington, D.C.
And then they immediately get public school, public health care. They get benefits because they're children, and we want to help children.
And what happened is a very kind-hearted, probably appropriate policy. All of a sudden, the word got out on the grapevine that this is the thing to do, and we've encouraged this incredibly dangerous activity. I really am worried more than about the immigration policy and the safety of these children. And all they could come up with was a PR campaign to tell people it's dangerous to send your kids across the border.
So what did the Homeland Secretary say today? What is there any response? Is there any way to stop this from happening, or is this just the new United States of America that we should expect? Children will be sent across the border in these dangerous conditions, and they're ours now.
Well, that was the question that I asked. What can we do about it? What policies can we implement to protect the children and turn off this magnet that our policy has created that encourages parents to do something incredibly dangerous? We've already had a report of a young child that has died going through this process.
Yeah, and they wrap themselves around the mantle of they're the ones who care about children, but they have created a policy that is putting children in harm's way by encouraging this behavior.
Absolutely. It wasn't thought through. It sounded like a good idea at the time, but nobody, I guess, who came up with that policy saw that the word's going to get out on the grapevine that if you're a child and, anywhere from infant to 17 years old and you get caught by ICE, you're going to get sent to whatever adult
it happens to be here. If there is one, otherwise you go into foster care. Really quickly, Congressman Blake Farenthold, Republican of Florida. I know you also asked, from Texas, sorry. Last guy was, Noah, sorry about that. You also asked the Secretary about the policy of releasing criminals out of the prisons. Was there any response there in terms of why the United States of America just released a bunch of convicted criminals out into the public who aren't even here legally?
The best answer you can get is we're trying to make room for the more violent, but that doesn't jibe with some of the offenses that folks are let out for.
They broke our law when they came into the country. They broke our law while they were in the country, and we released them back into our country instead of sending them back to their native homeland.
We've got an out-of-control immigration policy that has got to be fixed.
All right. Representative Blake Farenthold, we got to leave it there. Sorry about it. Boy, you misidentify a Texan, and they get very upset about that. Sorry about
yes,
that,
we
sir.
do.
27th District of Texas, thanks for joining us.